Hello, it is Bones, and welcome to another video, or your first video if you're new here. Somehow you have stumbled upon this. Please like, comment, subscribe. There, I did it. Okay, now we can get to business. I've been doing daily comic vlogs for 3 whole days now, I know, on a roll, and I didn't actually get a chance to read all the comments on the first video before I recorded the second video, which means there was more questions to answer. And so I'm probably going to look over some of the other questions, but one of them stuck out to me, and that was, when do you consider a script to be done? I've been having trouble figuring out what the stories of my comic ideas will be about and translating it into something I can build up on. And since I'm a writer of comics, I thought, what a wonderful question. So that's what we're going to dig into. If you have any writing or art questions, preferably writing, I do the coloring. I'm coloring right now on screen. But if you have any questions, please leave them below. And also tell me what you've been doing in your comic today, because this is the accountability space. I'm going to post daily for my accountability, and you're going to comment for accountability and to feed the algorithm. It's a mutually beneficial relationship here, okay? So yeah, let's get into the question. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to start with the first half of the question about when to consider a script to be done. When it comes to comics, webcomics more so than something you're like pitching to a publisher, you're gonna want everything to be nicely done in that case. But when it comes to webcomics, the answer is that it's going to be done when the comic is done, because webcomics take a long time to produce, and over the time where you're actually drawing and storyboarding and really like bringing the comic to life, you're going to inevitably improve as a writer, as an artist. You're just going to change, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to edit and fix your script. I started my comic, The Magpie, not what I'm drawing here, though I did start 9 Point around the same time, which is crazy, but anyways, I started that like 10 years ago, and I've changed a lot as a writer, and I had a script that I really liked for The Magpie, and reading back on it, I don't like it much at all, and now I have added 4 additional volumes to the comic because I want to flesh out the story more, and I'm not really... I had this issue back when I was beginning writing where I tended to end things too early. One of my first comics, Pretty Mouth, has that issue. So does Sovereign, my very first comic. Like, they just end very abruptly, and I've really learned a lot about that, and I've changed as a person, and there you go. I've just changed, and I think it's perfectly fine if you go back and edit things. So I wouldn't stress too much about things being perfect. It's a lot different than when you're writing a novel. The frustrating thing about writing novels is that they need to be kind of perfect before you release them into the world. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of time to, you have to edit everything in tandem. I think you can learn a lot from doing that. I think it's good to write until the ending, like the actual ending of your story, because you can edit and adjust a lot better when you do get to the point where you're 10 years into your comic and you're like, I have good setup for this, but I don't like how it pays off. I don't like what payoff I'm building up to. Or maybe I like the payoff I'm building up to, but I don't like the execution of it, which I think Magpie is like a mix of that. Like, I don't like the payoff and I didn't like the execution. But a lot of the ideas that I was building to, I just expanded outward from. When is your script done? Your script is done when it is done. Not helpful, but that's kind of where you gotta find it. Like, just write until you're happy with it, and recognize that you might not be happy with it in the future and just hope that you get better. Work on some other projects in the meantime as well to continue to learn about writing, and you're golden. I wouldn't stress about that. As for the second half of this question, how do you find the correct story to go with your comic idea? That's a lot more difficult. It can be very difficult to figure out, like, you have like a cool world or you have like cool characters and you want to find what the story is. Well, I think a way to look for it, a way to search out the story, it would depend on what pieces you have and what pieces you don't. But let's say you have characters, right? I think when you're starting character first, you have some ideas for characters. Start looking at their motivations, like what drives them, what do they want? Because stories can often appear within the want of a character. Like, what do they desire? What are they trying to achieve? Focusing on character motivation is a very good way to find story. It's a very good way to engage a story. When things feel very dry and meandering, it's usually a lack of motivation or inconsistent motivation. So if you have character, that's what I would look towards. I would look towards what do they want, and then find ways to put obstacles between them and what they want, and put it obstacles that you are interested in pursuing, interested in drawing. Like, don't throw in obstacles that you aren't interested in dealing with, okay? Like, don't make political obstacles if you don't want to write a political story, you know? Don't write obstacles that would be like a long adventure quest if that's not what you want to write. Like, obstacles can be like physical things, like physical barriers, but they can also be like mental things, mental barriers that the character needs to work through. And you can use physical problems to help them work through mental barriers. It becomes a lot more abstract when you're dealing with that, but it's valid and important, and you kind of want to layer them anyways. I'm going on a tangent here, but yeah, if you're looking at character, look towards motivation, look towards what makes them tick. If you have a world or just an idea for a world and you want to make characters for it, you want to make stories for it, you can either, it's going to be similar to searching for motivation, but if you have a world and you're like, I don't know who is in this world, like whose story is interesting, what kind of story do you want to tell about the world, you know? Figure out what type of story. Do you want a big epic quest? Do you want a small little romance? Do you want a political drama? Like, that's going to point you in the direction that you want. Like, yeah, because if you want a political drama, you're going to look towards creating interesting political actors within your story. If you want a romance, you're going to start thinking about different like pairings that would be interesting to you. I'm trying to think of a time where I was making a story that was world first. I think it was The Scourge of Ninepoint, which I'm drawing right now on screen. Yeah, for The Scourge of Ninepoint, when I was trying to like figure out the characters for the story, I was like, okay, I have this world where calico cats are oppressed, and I wanted to build it around the fact that male calicos are rare. So I decided, obviously, that like the best main character for that would be like a rare male calico. And then I had to kind of think about like, okay, so if they're oppressed, if they're like all killed off basically, what's his deal? And I'm like, okay, he's a rare male calico, but when he was a baby he was adopted by raccoons, and then you start fleshing out the different raccoon characters. Like, what is his dad like? What is his mom like? And then I want to be able to address like the larger world, because I want this to be a larger story. So what are some other perspectives I want? I want like a young knight. Well, I want like a young page who is training to be a knight, because then I can like introduce a lot of like the story, introduce a lot of the world, like what the cat government is like. And then I also wanted to have other fur colors mean different things. So we have like calicos who are like oppressed, but we also have pointed cats, which have like a certain set of powers, which I've developed. And the knights are pointed cats, so Mitzi is a knight, and I'm following her. But I also wanted to do something with the fact that white cats with blue eyes are often deaf, so I created a whole little plot behind that. And I was like, okay, then who is a white cat with blue eyes that I can have as a character? And I chose the 9-Point Princess for that, because it kind of gives her like an interesting perspective on being part of the royal family. And it all kind of spins out from that, where it's like, what are some cool aspects? What are some interesting characters that could exist in this world? And what purpose could they serve in delivering the exposition and exploring the world, you know? Because like focusing on a knight, we're going to learn a lot about what it is to be a knight, what it is to be part of the 9-Point Empire, whereas Marble, who is the calico kitty living with raccoons, he gives a perspective outside of the 9-Point Empire. And I just think that's neat. So that would be my advice for that, is just to look for things that are interesting, look for unique perspectives on the world that you're creating. If you don't have a world, if you just have an idea, I have some videos on world building. If you have more questions about world building, like I can expand on that further. But yeah, that would be my thoughts on the matter. Just checking the question one more time, translating into something I can build up on. Comic ideas and building up upon them. Yeah, I guess also just like ask yourself questions. Ask yourself why. Dig deep into characters. This is like a Brandon Sanderson thing, I think, that like you don't want to like dig wide. I think the impulse is to look into all sorts of different characters that could exist in this world. You know, like there's so many different cat knights I could focus on. There's 9 different powers. Like what if I had one for each? If you do that, you end up not digging deeply into anything. You scratch the surface on a lot of things. You kind of just have to pick something that's interesting to you and dig down into it. You know, pick your main character and really get into their world. And if any of these characters are boring, just make them interesting. Make sure to break things to make things interesting. If you are like, man, I want to write this adventure, but my main character just is not into it, make them into it. Find a way to make them. You know, you are in control. I have a lot of characters early on in drafts who are just like not into the story. And I guess that goes back to motivation, where if your character is not feeling it, you have to make them motivated. You have to put pressure on them, whether it be carrot or stick. You know, kill their family. Don't do that. Or maybe you can if you want. I don't know. Is your character, if that's what you need to do to motivate your character, you know, orphan them, okay? Or give them a prize at the end. Give them something they want. You know, that is my advice. I can't believe I've done a 3rd video. This is crazy. I will see you guys tomorrow. Like I said, leave a comment below. They are super good for me algorithmically, and they're also super helpful for making videos because it gives me something to talk about. Yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Can you believe it? That's crazy.